First, let's welcome Randall Luthi, who currently serves as the Policy Director for Governor Mark Gordon. Randall is a proud University of Wyoming alumnus with both an undergraduate and a law degree from the University of Wyoming. Randall brings a wealth of experience as a public service and natural resources management expert. His career has spanned roles such as Speaker of the Wyoming House of Representatives, Director of the Minerals Management Service at the Department of the Interior, and as President of the National Ocean Industries Association. As a rancher and an attorney from Freedom, Wyoming, Randall understands firsthand the importance of balancing economic development with environmental stewardship. His experience combined with his deep commitment to Wyoming's future makes him uniquely qualified to address this opportunity to talk about carbon removal technologies that are present in our state.
Temple, thank you so much for that introduction. I had told people at at the table I was at that, yeah, where are you from? I said, I'm from Freedom. And they go, where is Freedom? Well, it's there. It exists. And JT, one of the freshest, youngest faces in the legislature, I was there once. It's been a while, but it has led me to give the opportunity, since I'm from Freedom, was a member of the legislature, I was the original Freedom Caucus, okay? And I, again, appreciate the opportunity to join all of you, and particularly talk about some of my favorite topics, which certainly is Wyoming, energy, and carbon capture. And it's especially, again, JT, to share the podium with you because, you know, you are on the cutting edge. You're on the front lines. You're in Southwest Wyoming that is actually starting to work and understand what this cowboy economy can be, what this carbon capture economy is now and could be. So in some ways, I envy you because you're going to be pushing a lot through while I'm sitting in, while I join Jim McGagda in the wheelchairs on our on the porch, and you know, and say, yeah, back in the day, this is what we used to do. So yeah, so looking forward to that. And setting the stage, I thought, thank you for that opportunity because it does give me an opportunity to talk about Wyoming because Wyoming has actually been putting the stage together for many, many years. We've been fortunate to have leaders in the legislature, in the governor's office, in private industry, in agriculture that have recognized the unique challenges Wyoming has and the unique promises and solutions that Wyoming can bring to, again, when we talk about carbon dioxide. So what is currently the stage? And I think we have to better understand that. I'm just going to share with all of you, some of you are from out of state, but I'm going to share with you what is important and has been so important to Wyoming and why it ties in so well to the CO2 industry. Wyoming exports 12 times more energy than we use. 12 times. We are an energy exporting state. Our economy depends on the ability to export energy. If we can't do that, there's big changes in Wyoming. Probably not for the best, but there would be huge changes in Wyoming. What kind of energy do we have? Coal. We're the #1 producer of coal, and we have been the #1 producer of coal for almost 2 generations. What that does for Wyoming, that means about 16 coal mines. 8 out of 10 of the largest coal mines in the U.S. are in Wyoming. That provides about 5,000 direct jobs and over 10,000 indirect jobs. The average salary in a coal mine industry, over $80,000. Why do we think it's important to Wyoming? Those are some of the figures right there. We have 12 coal-fired power plants in Wyoming, about 17 coal-fired units as part of that. We ship coal to over 20 other states. In oil and gas, we rank 8th and 9th. But on gas, we're #1 on gas from federal lands, which also is a unique thing about Wyoming. About 48% of Wyoming's surface is federally owned or managed. 67% of our mineral estate, that includes oil and gas, are federally owned and managed. I often describe it as a shotgun wedding with the federal government. You know, you have to exist with them, you have to sort of live next to them. You don't always agree, you might have some pretty good fights, but we got to figure out how to make it work together. Oil and gas industry supplies over 58,000 jobs, provides almost $12 billion in economic benefits. So when we talk about fossil fuels, we talk about Wyoming. So now I think you can see where we're now going to that next part of the stage is where are we now? So what has changed? What has largely changed is concern over CO2 and CO2 in the atmosphere. You know, to many of us in Wyoming, we hear those in DC and other areas at COP talk about the biggest existential threat to our society is CO2. I don't think you're going to find 5 people in Wyoming that's going to believe that. They're just not going to buy it because coal and fossil fuels are just too important to our livelihood and our economy. However, that concern over CO2, that concern over climate change, changes what we do. When we have administration like we do at the moment, that gives a ripe opportunity for a several range of regulations, particularly targeted to how we see it. We see it targeted as towards fossil fuels. We don't see it targeted so much as CO2, and that's one of our biggest complaints, is if you're concerned about CO2, let's figure out what to do about CO2. Let's just not shut down coal mines. Let's just not focus on oil and gas and how we can control all those emissions. Let's talk about the actual methane gas, CO2, concentrate on the real problem, or what we believe to be the problem. So with that attitude as well, we see other states. I told you we export most of our energy. We export energy to many of those states to our west. Those states are very concerned about CO2. For example, Washington, Oregon, and California have all passed legislation that will either reduce or actually phase out coal, taking electricity from coal between 2005 and 2030. That sends shudders to people in Wyoming. Even the market alone makes a difference to Wyoming. Wyoming's coal used to provide about 52% of the nation's electricity. We're now down to about 20%. What has made the difference is natural gas. So in Wyoming terms, it's still a fossil fuel, but we also know that natural gas will likely be the next target of those that are concerned about CO2. But together, fossil fuels are still supplying about 60% of the electricity. Even in Wyoming, a state so dependent on coal, we used to supply 91% of our electricity from coal. We're down to about 65%. What has changed? More gas and more renewables. 25% now comes renewables. Again, what does Wyoming do about it? Fortunately, probably as early as 2012, if not earlier, our legislature recognized we want to deal with CO2. So we started talking about what do we do? One of the things they did was establish the Integrated Test Center, which is a facility right next to the Dry Fork coal-fired power plant. And it allows testing of flue gas and testing of different technologies to remove CO2 from that flue gas. Wyoming wants to be ready. We want to be able to provide that lower CO2 product to our customers. Wyoming legislature established a statutory framework that takes CO2 from its creation into its long-term sequestration. Wyoming actively supports sequestration of CO2 through enhanced oil recovery as well. Storage should and does include enhanced oil recovery. And that works well for Wyoming for a couple of reasons. And the current administration, again, where we're struggling to get oil and gas leases, we have to figure out how to get every drop of oil out of where we can. Because again, 67% of that mineral estate is controlled by the federal government. If we can use enhanced oil recovery methods to do that, I think we're smart to do it as well. We also, in the legislature, allowed that the landowners, the surface owners, control the pore space. Hence, here is another opportunity for a landowner to make money. You know, Wyoming's kind of a hard place for agriculture, even though we've done it for a long time. It takes, there's a lot of dry land, there's a lot of open land, there's a lot of area, and you don't make, well, Jim knows, you don't make much money on sheep and cows until maybe this year. We're doing pretty well this year. But as a rule, you don't. So anytime you can give a landowner an opportunity to supplement their income, rather that be through wind, rather be that through solar, rather that be through ability to sell pore space or lease pore space, I believe that should be an opportunity to do that. Finally, it's all about the rocks. Wyoming has great rocks. We can store CO2. We have several basins that are just ideal for storing CO2. We have those types of opportunities. So the stage is pretty well set for what is coming, what we think is coming, and to some degree what is already here. We also have the legislature pass what we call the Governor's Energy Matching Funds, provide an opportunity where we would use state funds to match private or federal funds for energy-related projects. It has been the goal of Governor Gordon, my boss, that we try and make many of those connected to CO2. So we have helped fund a Black Hills CO2 capture and hydrogen project. We've helped fund some Rocky Mountain projects as they look at carbon capture on a coal-fired power plants. And we've also helped fund the Southwest Sequestration Hub with Frontier Carbon, with that, as Scott would say, the largest federal grant to any university forever, right? Is that close enough? Close, okay, yeah. There may be a little bit of hyperbole in there, but I'm an old politician. I can get away with that, right? So, what is the remaining challenge? Frankly, it's going to be pipelines. It's going to be transportation. So, what happened? And where are we now? Last week may be a shift. What happened last week? Momentous election. It could change what we do about carbon capture. And I think that just let me underscore some of the challenges as we move forward. Overall, business friendly. Frankly, from Wyoming's point of view, under the current Clean Power Plan regulations, there was no way we could get the technology up, running, and at a decent price that we could meet those requirements. So we're looking for relief. We expect relief on that. But that doesn't mean we don't keep moving towards lower CO2. On the state level, there are those that are quite suspicious about CO2 capture, well, CO2 capture and sequestration. We need to work on that. We are those that are concerned about eminent domain of pipelines. Once again, the transportation issue. There are those that see a no need to capture CO2. While I do believe there will be some of those shifts towards that direction, I believe it's the market. It is the market that is still going to require and ask Wyoming producers to produce lower CO2 fuels. So what we now work on too is CO2 as a product, not just what has been called a pollutant. I believe we need to take a very market-based approach, and we'll move forward as we move forward in Wyoming as that as well. I do believe another challenge will be direct air capture in Wyoming. It has not been particularly popular, but we also have a lot of landowners that have the right to should be able to do what they want to do with their land. So with that, I think I've hopefully set the stage of what you're looking for, or what we're looking for in Wyoming. I know you're going to have a great informative conference, and so it's now I get to turn it over to the real on-the-ground expert, Representative Larson.